Okay, great. So I think we were here at choice and change. I think we had started maybe talking about it, that to choose. And this is what where we were discussing, I think, reflecting upon together, that have we, can we, would you like to share examples where we have been able to see that I have a choice and to be able to choose what is uh, in accordance with a selflessness, like what we call as divine will, what is beneficial for all of us, rather than to go on and try to fulfill my own selfish demand, the demand of the ego. So I think we left here reflecting upon this. And I think this story was also shared that where Nachiketa uh, asks for something which is beneficial, but not comfortable. What is not pleasant, maybe give you a little bit of discomfort, because when our demands are not met, desires are not met, it does give us a bit of discomfort, but it's an auspicious discomfort because it aligns us with our deeper self, that which is beneficial for all, that which is shreya rather than preya. This comes in Kathopanishad. So this is where we kind of stopped last time. And this is something really beautiful by the mother here. I wonder, why can't I present this? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So anyone, would you like to read these lines by the mother, and then we can reflect over it on choice?
May I read, madam?
Yes, Mohanji, yeah, please.
Choice. At every minute of your life, you must make a choice between what drags you down and what drags you up, between what makes you progress and makes you go backwards. At every minute, one has to choose. This is indispensable. The choice, every second, the choice is before you, and you may take a step downwards or step upward, take a step backward or forward. And this state of choice must be constant, perpetual. You must never fall asleep. The mother.
Thank you, Mohanji. So this is something which I think all of us have experienced, so far in our life, that um, we do have a choice, and many a times we, first of all, we are not aware that we have a choice. So if somebody is demanding something from me which is not really a good demand, I have the option to say no, but then I'm also responsible for the repercussions, that I say, okay, this is the choice I want to make, I want to say no to this demand, and I'm responsible for whatever happens after this. But we are not able to do this because our selfish demands are attached with what if when I said no, what will the person do, and will he throw me out of the house, or anything related to a friend or a partner, a colleague, anything. So we are not able to let go of that, and hence we don't take the
Like
side of,
the
sorry. Yeah, Mohanji, you want to say something?
nothing, madam. Here I did not mute it, so
Okay. Yeah, so I was sharing that at every moment of our life, we have this choice to say yes to what is true and beneficial, and to say no to other, courage to say no to what is not really beneficial and would only please certain egos or my own ego, and to step back and not to take that decision or not to make an action in that line. So I think, first of all, I think through life experiences, it takes a long time before we become aware that I have a choice. And then once I know I have a choice, even then it's not that easy to use it every time, because we don't want to discomfort other people around us. What will they say? What will they think of me if I make this choice? Maybe going to a particular satsang or anything, maybe you think that it is beneficial for you, but then that disturbs the balance of the house. And we are not ready to disturb the balance. And Sri Aurobindo also says that we have to move from one superficial harmony to a deeper harmony, to much deeper harmony. So in our houses, mostly, if I'm not wrong, most of the families, we have a very superficial harmony, that if one person starts to follow his truth, he may feel that it will disturb everyone, and I don't want to do that, so I better keep my mouth shut. That's what we suppress our self-expression. But then slowly, if we have suffocated ourselves enough, and now we want to make that plunge, things fall into place. After a little bit of discomfort, people begin to, if you are really sincere on the path, people begin to accept it. People somehow, with grace, things fall into line. And things like whatever was superficial harmony achieves a deeper harmony, that now people are okay even if you are following your calling, and they're okay with that after a little bit of discomfort. So this choice has to be made, because I think we compromise a lot on this choice. I'm especially right now talking of the external situations where I have to make a step externally, take a decision. Okay, I have to go there. It's beneficial for me. I find light there. I find lots of wisdom there. I have to make a routine. But then you are seeing also that your family is disturbed. So what would you do? For how long would you keep suppressing the delights that you will have when you are able to go outside, for example? So that is considering outer situation. And at the same time, we also have a choice each moment internally. So a thought comes, usually we are not even aware, and the thought is there. We are lost in thoughts so much that the thinking is going by default. But now when I'm becoming more conscious of thoughts, feelings, whatever is going on in the being, then I see the thought. Now I see that if I follow this thought, it is coming from my ego. And I am also able to see that if I step back, which is difficult for me, it is beneficial for me. I'm at the side of truth if I step back. So to notice the inner movements also and choose there also, not only make the outward steps in the right direction, but also the inward steps in the right direction. So anything that traps me further and further in the ego zone, not to follow those thoughts and feelings and sensations. That's the choice, and anyone, please, because this is a very important topic, and anyone who wants to share at this moment, I'll just pause the screen share of making choices every moment, and maybe there are challenges that we will face. We face challenges everywhere, but not to be dogged down by the challenges. So anyone wants to share anything on choice that is coming to you right now?
Hi, Monica. Hi. And regarding that external circumstances, you said, I was like that. That is, I'll make sure everything is done at home, but then I will not make the choice. I will not take that step forward. Because even if everybody, I have done all the things I have to do here, even in all the jobs here, and even when everybody will be involved in their jobs also, then also I will be sitting, waiting for them to come and ask, okay, they may ask something, they may need something. So I have spent 25 years of life like this. So, and then even when I was working as a teacher, this was kind of my position. I thought it was made by the others are putting all these things on me. Now, after coming to this satsangs and all that, I understood this was a choice that I made, that nobody pushed, because I have tuned the whole life around me and myself like this, That's why this is happening. That so after coming to the satsang only, I slowly, I really wanted to come and know and where my weakness lies and why it is many of these challenges are happening to me, both physically and my health is going haywire. So then I stopped and thinking about this. Then I understood that nobody made me do this. It's my choice that has created all the havoc in my life. So now slowly I'm coming, and so now I know that today at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock or 2:45, Savitri Satsang is there. I make sure that morning when I get up, the first thought will be I should attend. Yes, it's not that I have to neglect everything, but I will keep everything in such a way that by 12:30 or 1, I will be free. So it's a very, very small step, but for me, it's a big step because I have not done this. Even when I was working also, I used to rush back home to pick up my children, to make snacks, and then the whole thing goes around that. Or in the school. So I never had the choice. And as when you said that saying no, it never came to me. I was, what will others think? And I don't want to displease anybody. Now I understood that it is the ego. It's my ego that, oh yeah, see, if I ask her, she will not say no. She will always say yes. She is so good that she will do everything. She will take everything on her, but it is all at my cost. I realized only very recently. So then, so that's what I wanted to share today. But slowly I think I'm taking the baby steps to come out of it, and it is showing on my health and my peace of mind also. It's really, really showing that I'm doing something for myself and my inner self that is there with me throughout 24/7, which I have ignored, which I have neglected so far in my life. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. More power to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. There's a quote by Rumi, where he says that it's strange, not remembering the exact words, where he says that it's strange to see a person sitting in a cage while the key is next to him. So just what you shared, that it's us ourselves who bind our own, and suffocate our own life. And we can, for a long time, we can say that others don't allow, but it's not like that. Yeah.
Yes. That's how elephants are trained. They will, when they bring the baby elephant, they will put the chain. So they will not remove the chain. But even when the elephant grows up, even then the chain is removed, the elephant thinks that the chain is still there. So the elephant will not move after a certain area. It will make its own, it will make a circle and it will not go out of that. That is how in Kerala and the temples, they have elephants, right? So they say that they train the elephants like that. So when I heard that, then I thought, okay, I'm also like that. Even if there is no chain, it's all invisible. But I have put maybe some sometime it has happened, but it is high time to realize that there is no change. So as you said, like you said now, that's how the animals are trained. Now I thought I should come out of it.
Beautiful. That's a very powerful example that you shared. Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful. This reminds me of an analogy on chains, which I used to share. That imagine that a person is born with chains, just like you are sharing that from a baby size, the elephants are put chain around their leg. So imagine that I am born with chains, and chains are conditionings that we get through our parents, that you have to be a good girl and be like that and behave like that, always take care of people around you. So this is what gets into us, like I am taking all that as chains. I am not realizing that it's a chain yet. It appears that mummy keh rahi hai, papa keh rahe hain, it all must be okay. And slowly these invisible chains are around us and we don't even know. Now we see a person, this is how we get inspired, that I see a person and I see that this person there's something more about this person, which is not there in me, but I aspire to be there. And then I look at him and that person says, oh, but you are wearing chains. And I may say that, where are the chains? I can't see that, because those chains of conditioning have become a part of my being. And that's why we face a bit of discomfort. All of us face a bit of discomfort when we let go of these chains, because if I'm born with chains and now I'm used to having these heavy things around me and they don't appear heavy, they are a part of my being, they don't appear heavy. But now the moment it is removed, I feel uneasy, that no, something is not right. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I put it again. No, because I'm used to it. I'm used to being limited. Now, the moment I put it again, no. So we undergo a lot of discomfort and unease while these chains of conditioning and limited ideas is dropping off. But then if we have company, good company, and there are people to hold our hand, then I walk around naked with my no chains in my hand, and I sense a beautiful freedom inside me. And I say, yeah, this is beautiful. And now the next time I put on the chain again, I feel uneasy with the chain. Earlier, I was feeling uneasy without the chain because I was used to it, a matter of adaptation. Now, since I am getting a hang of roaming around in my freedom, and following the inner call, the deepest call, then the moment a chain is put, now I immediately see that this is a chain and I am able to drop it. So it's important for us to go through this discomfort when the limitations that we are so used to living with, these are the roles of a mother and this is the role of a daughter-in-law, we are used to live with these limitations. When they get kind of drop off, one goes through a sense of discomfort and unease, but it's an auspicious discomfort, as you were sharing by your reflections. And slowly things become more effortless in other direction, in a positive direction. Yeah. Great. So anyone else would like to share their experience on choice, what we were reflecting upon, the mother's quote? Inwardly, we have an inward choice also. Which thought to give priority to, which thought to give attention to. Is it a thought which is expanding me? Is it a thought which is limiting me, suffocating me? And is it a wishing well thought? Am I wishing well and beneficial for others when I am buying into this thought? Or am I, it's a thought of ill will? To become conscious of what am I thinking? And to choose, to have the courage to choose the right kind of thoughts, which are beneficial for me also and for all others. But it's hard, especially with us, it's easy. But when we are working in groups, it can be challenging, at times. But yeah, the work starts with us first, later on in groups. But I have seen that working in groups with people who are used to a kind of a negative loop of thinking, to let them know that the thought is a power, don't misuse it. It's not easy to work in those groups. Yeah. Okay, so I'm assuming there is no further reflection, so I'll go ahead. Right, so this is what we were talking about, that we have choice, and to become aware of the choice, that nobody is binding us, it's our own self, as Jayashree was sharing, and to be able to exert that choice. I mean, what's the point of us being humans if we don't have any choice in the matter of thinking, feeling, and perceiving, and where we are in the mind, and even externally. So to become a little bit in charge of our being in the starting. Now, this is difficult, as we were talking, that to exercise choice at all the time in my life is a difficult domain. So because unconsciously we may be falling into a tendency just because I think, अरे मैं तो हमेशा से यही करती हूँ, this is what I do all the time, right? So not to question it. So questioning is very important, that is it giving me any benefit? Why do I follow it all the time? Who has forced me to follow it all the time? So to question our own ideas and beliefs and tendencies. So mother says that never to fall asleep. And so, no, sorry, this is not by the mother. This is by the book that we are referring to, Hafiz and Hafiz, the book on psychic education. So here it says that never to fall asleep, to be conscious of each and every movement of my being, which thought to choose, which action to choose, which word to choose. It's not easy. Many a times we do, and then in retrospect, we are able to analyze. But it's a capacity that grows as we go ahead. Just like, when we are learning guitar on any instrument, in the first day, our fingers are very, troublesome over the instrument. We don't feel really nice about that. And we want to play beautiful, but we can't. Although I know that I have the capacity to grow into a beautiful musician, but right now I have to really go through the discomfort of losing the notes many a times, and then finding a note, maybe playing it nicely, and then losing the notes again. So this is a little training that one requires, so that one becomes conscious of all the movements, and no movement is a wrong or ill movement. That takes a long time, even lifetimes, many a times. What helps you stay awake is to be clear what about your highest ideal. So when I'm choosing something, and we know that death is not far away. Death is right here with me all the time. So what am I choosing right now? If this was the last day of my life as human being, and I know that the state of consciousness in which I die will continue, I'll gather my threads from that in the next rebirth. Where do I want to be in the head right now? Do I still want to think about those poisonous things? Or do I want to concentrate on the mother or on the breath and remain ingathered? Or do something really worth doing, or maybe not worth doing, even little stuff, but doing it with an act of offering, like service. So highest ideal kya hai? What is my highest ideal? That has to be, even if we have to think about our highest ideal all the time. Okay, you are going to get mad over the person, right? But what is your highest ideal? Your highest ideal is to remain ingathered. Will you still get mad? No. So there you are able to choose. Yesterday I want to share an incident, just a kind of a personal sharing. Yesterday I had to attend a meeting in our apartments over an issue which was raised, and there was a team lead who was leading that this is what I propose to be done. And then he was sharing this with 4 of us. And now 4 of us who are sitting are equally members of that committee. And he was really dramatizing the event, whatever has happened, a difficult event that had happened, which has to be addressed. Those people have to be called upon, and they have to talk to the committee, and we have to talk that this incident should not be repeated again. So we are talking about this. Now this person who is the lead of the team, he is proposing a proposal that this is what I propose. In that proposal, I could see that he's dramatizing the events, like having the juice of the story, in a bad sense, like unhealthy sense, like somebody is alcoholic and you are having fun of him being an alcoholic, and he's not showing it. So it's very, very implicit. And then he shares a line. So all this while we are listening to him, and he shares a line that, please tell me if I am dramatizing too much. Now, the moment he said this, I said, I would like to say that you are dramatizing too much. This is a wrong direction for us to follow, and we don't have to, use our thoughts in such a bad sense that everything, this could have happened and this worse could have happened. And then he's imagining that being an alcoholic, what other things he can do, murder somebody, bang cars into somebody. So he's imagined the worst possible things possible. And I am saying that you are dramatizing. Now, for me, the challenge was that the person was not able to take it. And he said that you are accusing me, you are insulting me, how can you shout at me? While he was not letting me speak, and he said that I'm shouting at him while I raised voice so that I could be heard. So it really shook me, that incident. What shook me was that being a committee that we are, wishing for the welfare of the residents where we live, the game has become an ego dominating game. That, okay, whose idea is to be followed? That I will speak and you will listen. So although he's sharing and it's appearing that I am open to all ideas, but the moment an another idea is presented, one is not able to take it. And that's what I was referring to when I was sharing that when we are working in groups, it can be really very challenging. I was shaken, for a few, I can say, hours after this incident. And I offered them that I am ready to resign from this committee if I am not even able to express what I really want to say. That this is wrong. One should not go there. And I don't want to listen to these stories which are too dramatized and even poisonous. And of course, they did not accept the resignation. That was just, they thought that it was for fun that I was saying. But then later on, I realized that what is my ideal? Where do I want to be? Again, talking of this ideal. And then I said that I really want to be ingathered. I don't want to lose my inner communion. And anything that comes on the way is not really important. What if anything happens externally? Nothing can change my ingathered state. And then I immediately kind of, gave it to the mother, and I said, Mother, you tackle this. And if I am required, I know that you will let me know. And I stepped back and really felt that peace and inner stillness, which was shaken, I can say, really, really strongly after that event. It kind of really came back and puts the things in kind of proper place. So this for me really helps when I know that where do I want to be inwardly right now? What is most important for me? But most important for me is not to prove that I am right or that other person is wrong, but I want to stay inwardly calm and peaceful and also alert. I don't want to, enjoy or relish the havoc of thoughts that it creates when you give too much importance to external events and happenings, right? So that was really helpful, when we talk about remembering our highest ideal, how it can help us putting things back on the track again. But because ultimately I feel that it's all about our inner sadhana. I may be a leader outwardly, but inwardly, if I am displaced, nothing is really happening. So where I am inwardly, if inwardly I'm not displaced, then I can take right decisions. But if I'm displaced, if I'm acting from the ego consciousness, then never would a right decision be taken. But then I also realized that I think it's important also to indulge in a little bit of, say, politics, if I can say, because I see a politics there. Because, usually most of us who are treading on the spiritual path, they take a step back from the game of politics and administration. But then the politics always remains dirty. It always remains kind of an egoistic game. So although I feel really threatened, and I feel that it's not an easy game to be in the system and try to change it, but then I see that one has to go through the discomfort also, and maybe do something about it and stay there. And maybe I should not have said that I should resign. It's not good to resign, really, I think. Not that soon. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Yeah, this was on the highest ideal thing. So to be awake and clear about our highest idea, where do I want to be? Then little things can drop off. They will not stick and disturb. The more your aim is real and alive for you. One is an aim in a theory that I have written it down, and 10 years, I don't even remember what was my aim. But if it is an alive aim, if I remember it every day, every moment, if I try to remember it, the more your aim is real and alive for you, the easier it becomes to choose for the highest. Yeah, so immediately one is displaced and then one gets back on the track again because the aim is real and alive. I'm feeding it, I'm nurturing it. So it becomes easy to follow it. When your aim is alive, even though lower parts in you want to push you in opposite direction, like, one could feel in a darkness or a despair, even if, because the lower parts are alive, as long as we are alive, the lower parts are alive. Even for so-called enlightened beings, anything can happen anytime and you can fall into the trap of the ego. So that's why we call them enlightened beings, because they have such a strong vigilance that never let them falter into the egoistic trap. So the lower parts, even if they want to push in the opposite direction, in the direction of the ego and darkness and despair and guilt and shame, all that, you are less inclined to listen to them. So it's not that the ripples are not there of the lower movements, but you have something higher to absorb yourself in. And you don't want to compromise with that. They don't bother you because your concentration is on something else. Right? So trivia is there in the life, but I have no time to attend to trivia. Such is the offering to truth you give. And this comes very strongly in the example of, this life of Jetsunma Tenzing Palmo. Most of you I have shared with. So where in her biography, Cave in the Snow, she shares again and again, she had many chances to get distracted, but she never let anything distract her. Anything. So I think this comes very alive when we read or hear to these kind of stories, that it is possible. Once you have set your aim that I have to be ingathered all the time and I want to commune with my highest and deepest possible self, if that is alive in me, then nothing on this earth can stop it from happening. Even grace, then grace pours and all the sides help comes so that you can chart your way. But that decision has to be mine. If the decision is not there, then I expect help. That's not going to happen. So the decision to live a purer and a better life, a life lived in goodwill, a life lived in calmness, kindness, generosity, wishing well for others, not in ill will. If this decision has happened, then everything aligns slowly. We get all the help, all the right books turn on our way, right people turn up, and the path becomes much easier. Yeah, anything here, anyone? I can stop here. Okay. So then we can talk about what is the difference between preference and a choice. What is choice and what is a preference? So let us first reflect upon it, if we can, and then I'll share the slide where they talk about choice and preference. So in your life, if you can look, what are your preferences and what is a right choice where you are standing on the side of truth. So if we have examples to share of preferences and choice, if there is any difference, if you have noticed a difference, that would be nice.
Yeah, so Monica, preference would be out of, what you're used to, your conditioning and your desires. But choice has to be very conscious, like you said. So examples, so pata nahi, basic things maybe socho. It's like every moment, na, what you prefer. Like abhi thandi mein subah uthna, what do you prefer? Like, kambal od ke so jao, but you do make a conscious choice of, getting up at proper time and doing the things that are required so that there is no chaos. So that's a choice, conscious choice. Even in food, like preference wise, तो अभी के मौसम में और जो कंडीशनिंग रही है, like तला तला खाओ, गरम गरम खाओ, ठंडी है. So, but no, but then you come to a conscious choice because that is good for your health. So yeah, these two just come directly to me right now.
Yeah. Yes. Anyone else? Anyone else wants to share about if they have noticed, just like Shweta shared, anything regarding preference or a choice? Yes, Sandeep ji. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
Divine Mother. Yeah, so no, not much to add because I am not prepared to tell. Just few of the thoughts came in. Choice is more like a direct, so like so mother as mother tells sometimes, you have a choice to which will take you towards the divine, or otherwise you will fall back or you get away from the divine. So that choice is at every moment and each in the circumstances you have to take a choice, you have to take a stand, right? So that is something I understand in that perspective. Preference is always it's a mind's limitation, I would say. It's a feature actually. Whenever we pray also to the mother, suppose, and we want something to happen, but at the same time we do have some preferences that this things should be like this, correct? So suppose let me say an example. If I'm going for exam and I'm praying for the mother, let the best happens, but the preference if I have that if I can get good marks and all, people will say a lot of things if I'll not get good marks. So there the preference comes. So there I will where whatever the grace has to work for me the highest possible way, with my preference it will get mixed up and it might not act in the right proportion, as I should get it. So preference, whenever you are in the spiritual path, especially, and you are having a call for to lead a higher life, not just an ordinary life, to lead an higher life, you have to get rid of all those mental preferences. In the mother's book also Sri Aurobindo has written about this, that the less we have preferences in our life, the more we are able to advance towards the spiritual life. So that is a clear distinction we can make where the preferences come. But choice, yes, always there is a choice for not just for a spiritual seeker, but every ordinary person also there is a choice. But for a more spiritual way, it's more clearer that which way you want to go. So in that perspective, I just put some light. That's it from my side. Thanks. Gratitude to the Divine Mother. Thanks, Monica ji.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Sandeep ji. Yes, absolutely resonates. Yes. And mother says that if we really want to advance, as you shared, on this path, then slowly, you have to let go of all your preferences and desires and what you want and what you don't want. One has to really let it all go. Yeah. So it's very interesting in the beginning to at least be conscious that I have preferences. Earlier we are not even aware, and the preferences are running themselves over us, like our life is preferences. It's not that I have a life in which there are preferences. My life is full of preferences, likes and dislikes. That's what happens unconsciously. But slowly, as we want to change and be a better version of ourselves, if I can say, slowly I think it's drawn to me that, oh my God, I have a preference here and I have a preference there and I have a preference there. So just it's like funny to observe that my life is full of preferences and likings and dislikings. So at least good to be conscious of it in the beginning before I can choose really and let it go. Yeah. So anyone else wants to add on to what Shweta and Sandeep ji had shared about choice and preference? Okay. So here, let's reflect upon this, along with what you both shared. So here it is said, do not mix up choice with preference. When you have a preference, you usually do not even try to activate your inner truth. So I am my tendency. And what do I want? I want food at this time. Uske alawa kuch possible nahi hai. I want to have food. Why? Because I have been having it for 10 years. So you don't question it. Don't go deeper towards your deeper self. One could say that a preference is a dressed up desire. So this is very interesting. A preference may look very elitist, like a very refined way of saying that I don't like this. So it's very tricky how the games that we play with our own selves, that it is a desire, but it's a dressed up desire. It may look good. See, this is my preference and how elitist and how refined my preference is. But it's a desire. It's a dressed up desire. So I think it's so true. So true. It may look good, but it does not relate with inner truth. And then Mother says something on preference, which if one of you can read would be nice. Anyone who wants to go through this little part in blue?
Can I read?
Yeah, please. Yes.
The mother. A preference is something blind, an impulse, an attachment, an unconscious movement, which is usually terribly obstinate. You are placed in certain circumstances. One thing or another may happen, and you yourself have an aspiration. You ask to be guided, but within you there is something which prefers the answer to be of a certain kind, or the event to come about in one way rather than another. But this is not a question of choice, it's a preference. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's clarity. Yeah.
So I think this is for all of us to really kind of have it in our life, these lines with us, and to reflect over it from day-to-day activities, movements that we are engaged in. That it's first of all very terribly obstinate. It's like a very stubborn movement. That if I have said that this is how it has to happen, this is how it has to happen. So this, and also that in us we can although see that there is an aspiration towards something, that this is the beauty I visualize and this is how the event should happen. You're aspiring, but then there is also this little thing hiding. You ask to be guided, but within you there is something which prefers the answer to be of a certain kind. And then when that thing does not happen, how to recognize that it was a preference? We get disappointed. It may not be a very out loud disappointment, but inwardly there is somebody who says, oh God, like how could that happen? So that's a preference. So this inner movement only I will be able to see. People from outwardly, they can't see that inner movement. So it's very easy to fool other people, but not easy to fool our own self, because I see that dipping down if that thing according to me does not happen. So we have to, although the aspiration definitely has to, so it's a very challenging game. The aspiration towards beauty, harmony has to be there. And you work also according to that alignment. But then, if things do not happen for some or the other reason, because we have a very limited window of understanding, we don't understand the larger picture. And if things turn out to be another way, then I say, okay, mother knows the best. And then I don't have any preference. Okay, I say, my inner completion is not dependent on what happens or not happens in that event. I am still complete and I am still with the mother. So knowing that there is a higher power, higher intelligence in operation, and that knows the best, because we don't have a clear, bigger picture all the time. Not all the time, but we don't have a clear, bigger picture. We just see through our limited conceptual minds, and that's not the bigger picture. So basically, to accept and not to say no to events that happen. Because when we resist the events, that imagine that maybe that's why, grieving happens. Many a times grief goes on and turns into depression, because something in me is not able to accept that it has happened. Now, as long as other people were dying, now every day we see in newspapers, some or the other person dies, even in our relatives, some or the other person passes away. But that does not touch me much. But when a very close person dies, then it hits me that how can this happen to me? So I'm not able to accept it. And then if I really am not able to accept it, even after a long time, it turns into really great depression. The non-acceptance of life events and happenings. So to understand that I don't have the larger picture, to say yes to the events that have happened because they have happened. Universe had some other plan. I don't know the larger picture. And to do our best now, knowing that event has happened. So still to continue on the path, but knowing that, okay, this is the situation. What can be the bestest possible attitude in this kind of situation? So you are accepting fully also, but it's not that you are accepting and being passive, that ho gaya jo ho gaya, ab kya kare? And not like that. Ho gaya jo ho gaya, now what is the best I can do? Just like when we suffer from diseases. Now I get cancer, right? Now it has happened. Now if I keep on saying why me, that is not going to help me. It happens to people, it happens to me. I am people. And then I say, okay, what is the best possible course of action I would like to take? Then things turn for the better. The highest possible, mother says that if we choose the highest possible attitude, then we can say that it happened according to the divine will. But usually we are not conscious of what we are choosing. So I think it's basically more and more becoming more conscious of little movements of our life, thoughts, feelings, actions, words, and to take charge and responsibility of our being. And also regarding preference, mother says that the human journey, why we are born at all, is from a journey from desire soul to true soul. So we are all born. In the beginning, it's not that visible, but then as the child grows up, he tends to have certain or other preferences, likings, desires. And so that slowly, the desire soul kind of manifests. Because why it manifests? Because the journey has to be taken. So to notice that I am living in desires, to notice that I suffer when I cling to desires. And if I really want to now end the suffering that comes through following the desires, than to take the plunge to walk to the true soul, to reach the deepmost part of our being, the truth, the true self, and begin to follow that, what is highest, what is beneficial, what is true, rather than what I demand, I expect, and I find is my desire and my need. So to step back from the desire soul and stand in the true soul, that's our journey. So a preference is coming from the outer personality, which is the desiring self. So slowly to let go. Yes,
Monica
Viren.
ji, I had just one observation because, last 3 years I've been trying this very much. But as I mentioned previously, it happens in fits and starts actually. So you resolve to actually just surrender, go with the flow, try to be free from desires. But it just sometimes keeps coming. And I don't know whether, this attempt at trying to be free of desire itself is something that is inhibiting the process. So I just, if you can share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think absolutely resonate with you, Birenji, that trying to be desire free. Now it can happen in two ways. It can be a desire that I want to be desire free, or it can turn into an aspiration that I want to be desire free. And that's what we are going to come at in the coming few slides, that how to transform a desire into aspiration. So to be desire free sounds beautiful, really, right? And also liberating. But a desire to be desire free will keep me trapped still, as you rightly said, right? So can I turn this desire, understanding now what a desire is, and also understanding what an aspiration is, we'll come to that now, and to turn that desire into aspiration, that I really aspire to be desire free, but I'm not burning that, oh my God, I still have desire, what to do, because that becomes a wall. So I resonate with what you are sharing, and we are coming to this exactly. So it's at a very right point that you raised this up. I'll share the screen again, and we'll go through this part where it talks about desire and aspiration. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about this since Virenji had raised this one. It's better to take right now. So we'll go into the details of aspiration maybe later, but let's talk about desire versus aspiration, because it's something which we all want to transform in our being, right? So aspiration itself, and especially psychic aspiration, that which is coming from the depth of my being, that an aspiration for truth, an aspiration for clarity, an aspiration for wisdom, to go beyond appearances all the time. So that's an aspiration, inner deep aspiration. So aspiration itself, especially psychic aspiration, is pure, but mental, vital, or physical aspirations are mixed with desire. So that is what I believe that you have been facing. Most of us face that. So if it is an intellectual aspiration, which is an okay thing, mental aspiration, beautiful, but it gets mixed up with desire. So my aspiration is mentally to be clear in my thoughts, to be clear in my ideas, but then the desire gets mixed up and it says, no, I am so confused today. I have to be clear in my ideas. This is my aspiration. So that really bothers, because a desire has this intensity like a fire, around it. It burns. Those of us who have tasted them, it burns. And scientists have also found out that the vibration of anger is equivalent to vibration of desire. So if you are just looking at the vibration, the energy, you don't know whether the person is desirous or angry. It's an equivalent vibration, right? So very, very intense. So that gets mixed up with aspiration. In human beings, there is a whole range of feelings and impulses which can be grouped under desire. So if I am getting too elevated or too disappointed, I can be sure it's a desire. When the desire gets fulfilled, yeah. And when it does not get fulfilled, I get really bogged down. Most desires come from outer nature, the desiring self, the outer personality, the surface personality, the egoistic self, and ask for a lot of attention. Like the whole day, I can be thinking of that little desire that is bothering me. So it asks for a lot of attention, that I want to have it fulfilled. I want to. How come this is not fulfilling? So the whole time my thoughts are engaged there. They're in the foreground. A desire is a deformed or dark shadow of an aspiration. Right? So it has the capacity to transmute into aspiration, which is something which is pure and innocent. It's not harmful. And it is important to detect your desires so that your aspiration becomes true. So it's good that I'm noticing in me that my aspiration is mixed with desire, because only then I can sort the wheat from the chaff. If I don't even know that there are stones in my wheat, how will I sort it? So to become conscious of these little ripples of movements, that my too much desiring is actually making a block on my way. So to relax, that I'm okay and I aspire to be desire free, but in a relaxed way, not to like in an aggressive, restless way. Because that, as you said, it blocks it. It blocks it from happening. So to let go of the desire to be desire free, and to just nestle in, if you have faith in anyone, to nestle in mother's arms and imagine that I am taken care of, and slowly, baby steps, it will happen. It will happen. And then there's something more on this desire and aspiration, that a demand or desire comes from mental, like from thoughts or feelings, the vital. But a psychic or spiritual need is a different thing. We'll come to that later. Because the psychic being, which is our true self, that does not demand or desire. It just aspires. It just aspires. You may have heard of this story where there are two bhaktas sitting in below a tree, and meditating and chanting and wanting to be liberated. And Narad is crossing the way. Narad ji is crossing the way, and they hear Narad's voice, and they say that, oh, since you have connection with Vishnu ji and the Lord Hari, can you tell us? Can you get to know that in how many? What time will it take for me to be liberated? So both of the bhaktas ask this question. So Narad ji goes to the lok, the heavenly lokas, and then he comes back again, and then he says that, okay, the first one, he says that, okay, you will be liberated after 3 more lifetimes. And the other one, he says that you will be liberated after 10 more lifetimes. So the first one says, oh my God, 3 lifetimes? That's too far. Why on the earth shall I continue to do this? And the other one, without any disappointment, he says that, oh my God, really, it's going to happen? Within 10 lifetimes, it's going to happen. And he continues to do his sadhana. So that's a deep aspiration, that even if it's going to take 10 more lifetimes, I'll give myself to it, because giving myself to it is joy. Giving myself to the path to become desire free is a joy. That's why I will do it. Not that becoming desire free will fetch me some rewards. So walking on the path itself, right now I have desires in my life, right? But I know that just noticing the desires and transmuting the desires into aspiration and stepping back from the desires, that itself is so joyous. So who bothers about becoming desire free one day? And then the path becomes joyous. So this is, I feel, a beautiful example for all of us, that to walk on the path for the joy of walking on the path, not that it will fetch us some rewards. Just like, usually when we are schooling earlier times, we used to school because schooling will fetch us a job. Job will fetch us good money. So not as a means to an end, but the process itself is so beautiful that I would rather give myself to it rather than do something else. So would that respond to anything that you were sharing, Birenji?
Yes, actually, it does. So I think it's a constant process only. So with work, it will, these fits and jerks will keep going less and less. That's the only way I ultimately see. It's a
Yeah,
work in process that will last till our lifetime.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Kabir ji has a couplet here where he says, "धीरे धीरे रे मना, धीरे सब कुछ होए, माली सींचे 100 घड़ा, ऋतु आए फल होए." So he says in English, it would be slowly, calmly, धीरे धीरे रे मना, oh mind, very slowly, very calmly. Dheere sab kuch hoye. Everything happens with baby steps, as you and earlier Jayashree was also sharing. Mali siiche 100 ghada. So even if the gardener puts 100 pots of water in one plant in one day, the fruit will come only when the season is there. Ritu aaye phal hoye. Without the right season, the fruit does not appear. And we don't know when the right season is there. But this is only to be said to people who are on the path. Because for people who have not yet walked, not yet even begin on the path, to them, Kabir would not say dheere dheere. To them, he would say that, hey, your life is passing by, come right away. Don't waste further time. So again, we have to really see in what context Kabirji is saying this. And not we cannot say for those of us who are in inertia, not walking the path, and to them saying that dheere dheere re mana, that really puts them more in inertia. Yes, please, Birenji. Yeah.
No, I think it was a very apt couplet actually. It's actually very true.
Okay, so anyone wants to add on anything? I think we can also stop there today and kind of ruminate and reflect upon whatever we have read today. Yeah, any more reflections? Anything anyone wants to add? I think with Mother and Sri Aurobindo's words, it's so intense, that even in 1 or 2 paragraphs, we have so much, almost appears like a mantra for a whole time, that even if I don't read anything else, it's enough. We can work on that. Yes, Sandeep ji.
Yeah, thank you. Just few last points just came to my mind. Just that thing Birenji has already, he was telling, right? So how he was becoming conscious about these things. There are lakhs of other people who are not at all even conscious about these things, right? So what made us conscious about these things? These kind of sessions, this kind of study circles, these things are only the need of the hour. The more we do these kind of things, the more we involve in the activities which takes directly towards the divine work for us, and which will make us worthy of the divine work in this earth. So this kind of things we should do regular basis. And Mother has also has emphasized 1 hour at least a day we should be involved in some unselfish and unegoistic works, right? So this kind of things we will keep doing. Mother will take care of all those things which we are supposed to overcome, right? So let's say suppose for your case it is desire, for my case it may be something else. There are a lot of other things which we may not be conscious of. What will lead us to there? What will help us to achieve that, overcome that? We need a complete transformation, right? So these kind of things will definitely help, and this will bring us more closer to the divine. So I request all of people whoever are present here, let us be more conscious and more actively participate in this kind of things, and let us reach out to others also with an a joy of working for the divine, that message to others as well. And I'm sure that definitely Mother is helping us as a collective also. We can achieve many more things in the future as well. Thanks Monica ji for allowing.
Yeah, thank you
That
so much, Sandeep. Yes, thank you. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. And yeah, more power to each one of us to be more and more conscious at each moment. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you.